All right, first on the docket today, the Lori Vallow, Chad Debell matter. Can the legal proceedings get any more bizarre? Some information was sent to me today that shows that Lori Vallow and Chad Debell have each filed a motion for an ex parte protective order. Let's talk about this. A protective order is normally a court order from the court saying you cannot disclose information, usually to the defense, usually to the defendant. He can review it, he can look at it, but he can't get a copy of it. He can't disseminate it. A protective order in a criminal case is there usually to protect information, usually a person. It's normally issued if there's a concern that some information could get out and someone could be harmed by it. Not once in 25 years of criminal law practice have I ever seen somebody file an ex parte motion for a protective order. Ex parte means that we can't have the other side participate in it, and that basically it is such an emergency that this needs to take place. Now, this case is so unusual, maybe there's something out there. I've been trying to think about it. What could it possibly be that the defense doesn't want turned over basically to the public, I guess, and also the prosecutor can't be present? The prosecutor is going to be able to find out what it is. The information would simply just not be released or disseminated to parties that did not have a need for it or were not specifically involved in the case. So I haven't seen the motion. Obviously, it's going to be sealed. It's going to be ex parte. But the judge, to grant it, would have to say that a grave or imminent harm would be taking place if I don't sign this ex parte protective order. I've never seen anything done like this before. Maybe it's something unique to Idaho. I just can't imagine it. Criminal law, in the essence, is criminal law everywhere. Yes, things change a little bit here and there. Each state may have a particular customary way of doing something, but at the end of the day, it's a criminal trial. The rules really come from the United States Constitution. So an ex parte protective order, we'll just have to wait and see. I just don't get it. Next on the docket, records show that Lori Vallow has left the house. Not the proverbial big house, but kind of. She's left. She is officially out of the detention center where she was being held, presumably at the state hospital to be evaluated regarding her psychological fitness to stand trial and possibly restoration to competency. Now, my question would be, why did it take so long? But needless to say, she's gone. The thing that is going to make her life miserable, if it's like a lot of defendants that are in custody right now being transported, is that there are still COVID protocols. So assuming she has not been vaccinated, she will have to quarantine for some 14 days. Now, I'm not saying that because I know what's going on there in Idaho. I'm saying that based upon what I've seen on clients currently pending transfer to different facilities, and everybody's still having to do the quarantine if they move from facility to facility. Last week seemed like it was a little slow on news, but this week is already off to a great start. Why, you may ask? Well, new documents have been released in regards to the Lori Vallow matter, the one in Arizona. As you may recall, Lori Vallow was charged basically conspiring with Alex Cox, her boyfriend, in regards to the death of her then husband. Well, a trove of emails and photos have been released by the police investigating that case, and they may appear to show the last pictures of her 7-year-old son before he was allegedly murdered. That's right, and his sister. The photos, which were recovered from Lori Vallow's iCloud account, they include one shot of JJ in red pajamas dated September 22nd of 2019, which is what investigators to be is the last photo of JJ alive. There were also some photographs of ammunition taken from an Idaho gun store. Not exactly sure how that plays in. except for the fact that, as you may recall, Tammy Debell was shot at. She may have thought that it was something else, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. There's another screenshot of a plane ticket that reveals Vallow had booked a flight under a false name from Idaho to Phoenix Mesa Gateway the day after Vallow's brother attempted to shoot Tammy Debell. I guess that's the ammunition. And why would you book a plane flight unless you wanted to make sure you were not in the area, perhaps establishing an alibi? Perhaps. Other pictures that were discovered on the iCloud account were taken from a California hotel, and they appear to date between November 28th and December 1st, when police were actually searching for Vallow's 2 children. Now, the photographs are in addition to some heavily redacted 2,500 emails, and they've been produced via a public information request from the Chandler Police Department. They've also been released now that an indictment has actually come down. As you may recall, she was indicted for conspiracy to commit murder in relation to the death of her ex-husband, Charles Vallow, who was shot to death by her brother, Alex Cox, and this was back on July 11th. This was all in regards to a custody dispute in regards to their son, JJ. Now, the police originally ruled that Cox was acting in self-defense. There were some irregularities for sure, but the other Lori Vallow matters made the police look a little closer and determined that everything that Alex Cox had indicated did not make sense. Now, we have talked about this before, and we're going to start going through all these emails, but I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not telling anybody to commit crime, but the cell phone, right? The cell phone, the ones that we all carry around, this thing has so much data, and it's amazing. People just do not realize the amount of data that is acquired. Every time you drive down the street and it says, hey, would you like to join this particular Wi-Fi account? That is all getting recorded without your information. I've seen cases where people were seen casing the bank, driving around, all coming from cell phone data. Now, not that I'm saying commit crime, but if you're going to, don't take your cell phone, for God's sakes. And if you're going to commit crime, you probably shouldn't do it via text messages and email. The bottom line is that it is all saved. And even if you think you've deleted it from this little phone here, no, it still is going to be backed up, assuming you have iCloud or some other storage device that saves everything that goes on in your phone in regards to emails, photographs, and text messages. If it's all there, guess what? They're going to find it. They're going to find it. And I've said this once and I will say it again. It is always the defendant's own words that come back and bite them. And when I mean bite them, means get them convicted. Okay? And some people seem to think that, and particularly people that get arrested, think the only thing that ever matters is what I say to the police upon my arrest. No, it's anything you say. Right? They're warning you. Anything you tell us right now when they give you a Miranda advisement. But it's anything that you've said to anyone comes in and is admissible against you as an admission by a party opponent. Obviously, it has to be relevant, but it's admissible. And people seem to forget that. Oh, I'll write a novel about what I'm going to do. Go do it. Well, you can't use that. I didn't say that to the police. It all comes in, ladies and gentlemen. It all comes in. We're going to continue to watch new information on Lori Vallow. It's going to get good. These emails, I'm telling you, they're going to be the demise of Lori Vallow and Chad Debell. Mark my word. First, the district attorney, Rob Wood, dismisses cases against Lori Vallow and Chad Debell. What are you talking about, Scott? Why would he dismiss cases? Well, in cases CR 22-20-0755 and CR 22-20-0838, those cases are dismissed without prejudice. So the cases that were dismissed by attorney Rob Wood were the 2 charges of conspiracy to destroy, alter, or conceal evidence Those were dismissed against both Lori and Chad. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean they're not going to bring up that evidence in the homicide trials? No. Well, the other thing we have to consider is the charges were dismissed without prejudice. Now, in the legal world, there's a term with prejudice and without prejudice. If something is dismissed with prejudice, that means it's never going to be refiled. You're forever giving up your opportunity to file those cases. Normally, that term is used in civil cases. Now, the district attorney can dismiss a case without prejudice at any time. That simply means that they reserve the right to refile the case if they choose to do so in the future. Well, there's still a bar on that. It's called the Statute of Limitations. So the prosecution can still refile the case if it is in the period which is prescribed by the Statute of Limitations in that particular state. Now, the next question is, will this evidence still be able to come in the homicide trials? Absolutely, yes, it will. I'm a little surprised the district attorney simply did not move to join those charges together so that you get the charges as kind of a backup in case there's issues with the homicide trial. However, like we talked about the other day on our live program, hey, the best thing the prosecutor can do is keep it simple. And when you start trying to prove stuff that, frankly, is going to be maybe a little difficult to prove, that when did it get there? Who did it? How did they get the children there? You have to start proving knowledge. And they can start blaming then Alex Cox, the brother of Lori Vallow, who I think most people believe actually committed the homicides. The district attorney will still be able to present the evidence as it is referred to as what they call res gestae evidence. Okay? There's a difference between 404B evidence, which is evidence of other crimes, wrongs, or misconduct, where the prosecution has to say, bring this in for this limited purpose. Res gestae evidence is evidence that is so intertwined into the case, although it is a separate charge and maybe not charged, it still comes in to basically tell the whole story. So I get why the prosecution did it, trying to keep it simple, makes sense, but a lot of people were making a big deal about this on the internet yesterday, and the reality of it is it's not that big of a deal. Obviously, if Lori Vallow and Chad Debell are ultimately convicted at trial, they are looking at spending the rest of their life in prison versus a paltry 12 years on these particular charges. So we'll see how things shake out, whether it was a good tactical move or whether the prosecution made a mistake. I think they made the right choice. On another housekeeping matter, the attorney who's been hired as a special counsel, Rachel Smith, she has been admitted pro hoc vice and can now appear on the homicide cases. It was sort of a formality, but the judge granted that order dated July 29th. What I thought was a little interesting was there was an order sealing the state's response to an objection to the entry of counsel and for a finding of a conflict. Well, that motion that was filed, obviously by the defense in that particular case, has not been filed and made publicly available. So I'm curious as to the issue as to why they're objecting to the appearance of counsel. Is it specifically Rob Wood as counsel, or is it Rachel Smith, the special prosecutor that's being admitted pro hoc vice because she's only licensed in the state of Missouri, and now she's being allowed to practice on a limited basis to specific cases in the state of Idaho? Well, the response has been sealed. Unclear why, and the defense motion has never been made public. So I've said this before and I'll say it again. These are public records. We, the public, should be allowed to see all the filings in this particular case. I'm not sure why, under these local rules, an objection to a prosecutor would require sealing of records at all. Maybe one day we'll find out. So much, though, for an open proceeding. Next on the docket, Chad Debell's children speak. And what have they got to say? Well, their father was framed. Chad Debell's 5 adult children, Garth, Emma, Seth, Lee, and Mark, spoke with 48 hours in their first interview since their father's case made the national news. Now, Chad's children say their father was framed and had nothing to do with the deaths of Joshua, JJ, and Tylee Ryan. Chad's children have remained relatively quiet over the past 18 months, but Murray, Garth, and Seth attended their father's arraignment back on June 9th of this year. They wore masks and sat behind Debell as he pled not guilty to multiple felony charges, including first-degree murder. Prosecutors are now seeking the death penalty in this case. When asked, how is it possible 2 children are found buried in your father's backyard and he had nothing to do with it, Emma responded, he was framed. Now, Chad Debell has recently waived his right to a speedy trial, so that trial that was supposed to start in early November is not going to take place. A hearing was scheduled for today, Monday, August 30th, but that hearing has been sealed by the judge, Stephen Boyce, and it won't be open to the public. Debell's next court appearance then is scheduled for a change of venue hearing, which is now set for October 5th and 6th. Now, the 48 Hours episode, The Secrets of Chad Debell's Backyard, airs Wednesday, September 1st at 9 p.m. Mountain Time. We'll certainly be watching. Now, from the teaser information that came out, there's no indication if they speak as to who may be responsible for the death of their mother, Tammy Debell. We'll definitely want to watch and see if that subject matter is brought up. Today, we look at why Chad Debell is more than likely guilty. Now, obviously, we'll give him the presumption of innocence until and if he pleads guilty or a jury convicts him. But as of right now, let's take a look at the facts that don't work out so well for Chad. A little background first. Now, Chad Debell pled not guilty to the murder and conspiracy charges he faces in connection to the deaths of his ex-wife, Tammy Debell, and the 2 children of his current wife, Lori Vallow, JJ Vallow, and Tylee Ryan. Now, here's a quick timeline of the events. On August of 2019, Lori Debell and her children moved to Idaho. On September of 2019, JJ and Tylee go missing. October of 2019, Chad Debell's wife, Tammy, dies. In November of 2019, Lori and Chad Debell marry in Idaho, just 2 weeks after the death of Tammy. Now, the police conduct a welfare check at Chad Debell's home for JJ at the request of his grandmother. Now, Chad and Lori Debell leave Idaho. They go to Hawaii in December. In December of 2019, a nationwide search ensues for the children. Now, in January of 2020, Chad and Lori Debell, they're found in Hawaii. In February of 2020, Lori Debell is served with a court order to produce her children. After failing to produce the children, Lori Debell is arrested on multiple charges regarding abandonment of her children. In March of 2020, Lori Debell is extradited back to Idaho. Well, in June of 2020, the remains of JJ and Tylee are found buried on Chad Debell's Idaho property. He is also arrested and charged. Now, in February of 2021, the Office of the Utah Medical Examiner completes an autopsy of Tammy Debell's body and sends the results to the Idaho prosecutors. In May of 2021, Chad and Lori Debell are indicted on multiple first-degree murder charges. So that's a quick recap of the timeline. Let's take a quick recess before we continue on. All right, aficionados, it's that time. Yep. Please go to crimetalkprep.com and you can get 4 weeks of an emergency food kit at $50 off and no shipping. This is a huge deal, okay? Look at the people in New Orleans right now. Natural disaster hits, the power is off. I think it was just coming back on, but guess what? Those individuals, they're on their own. And after the natural disaster or some sort of significant event happens, is not the time to run to the grocery store because there's nothing there. You have to prepare. Do the adult thing. Be prepared for anything that comes your way. Go to crimetalkprep.com. Get your 4-week emergency food kit, $50 off, and free shipping. You'll be happy you did. Now, what is it that looks bad for Chad Debell? Well, first, there's a lot of phone calls and text messages. Now, Lori calls Chad from the Madison County Jail on June 9th of 2020. Lori Debell says, "Are you okay?" Chad Debell says, "No, they're searching the property." Police and FBI investigators searched Chad Debell's Salem, Idaho property that day and ultimately uncovered the remains of J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan. The bodies were found on his property. The children were last seen on different days in September of 2019 in June of 2020. Now, law enforcement officials found the remains on Chad Debell's property in Fremont County. The children were buried in a so-called pet cemetery on Debell's property. Now, prosecutor Rob Wood said during a Zoom court hearing that the way one of the bodies was concealed was particularly egregious. Though he did not elaborate, it was later revealed that JJ was wrapped in 2 plastic trash bags and bound with tape. Tylee's badly charred and dismembered remains were excavated nearby. Later, a photo showed JJ sitting on a couch taken on September 22nd of 2019. He was wearing the red pajamas that were in the photo. Investigators say JJ was wearing red pajamas when they uncovered his body in Chad Debell's backyard. He is believed to have died around September 23rd of 2019. This certainly looks bad, but that's right. 2 weeks after his wife died, Chad Debell married Lori Vallow. A few days later, after her children were last seen and their spouses died not long before, the pair married. Now, Debell's wife, Tammy Debell, died in her sleep, allegedly, last October, with her death attributed to natural causes. However, her death has since been reclassified as suspicious. Her body was then exhumed in December, and through the results of the autopsies, although they have not been released, it is alleged through the family that she died of asphyxiation. The next bad fact. Well, they flew to Hawaii when the children were declared missing. The children's disappearance became national news after Debell and Vallow abruptly left Idaho following questioning by police of the disappearance of Tylee, 17, and JJ, 7, and about the same time as Tammy Debell's death. The couple had a wedding ceremony in Hawaii, and when investigators searched the property Chad and Lori were living at in Hawaii, there were no signs that the children were with them whatsoever. If this case wasn't so serious, they would be dumb criminal contestants for sure. All right, then we have the whole raccoon thing. Well, I've had an interesting morning. I felt I should burn all of the limb debris by the fire pit before it got too soaked by the coming storms. That's right. That's what Chad Debell wrote his then wife Tammy Debell at 11:53 a.m. on September 9th of 2019. While I did so, I spotted a big raccoon along the fence. I hurried and got my gun, and he was still walking along. I got close enough, and that one shot did the trick. He is now in our pet cemetery. Fun times. Now, agents believe that the text was unusually detailed compared to the couple's regular exchange and was sent the day after Tylee Ryan was last seen alive in Yellowstone National Park. Investigators also found it strange because raccoons are nocturnal and would not normally be out and about at this time of day. Now, the FBI searched Chad Debell's pet cemetery and found cats and dogs, but guess what? No raccoon. Let's talk about the fire pit. According to the affidavit for probable cause, Garth Debell, Chad's son and neighbor, told neighbors Matt and Regan Price that his father had shot a raccoon on their property in July of 2019. This was after the Prices were asked about the gunshot that they had heard. The Prices informed investigators that the fire pit in Chad Debell's backyard was hardly ever used until the last few months. Regan Price said that there appeared to be frequent bonfires in the pit on the Debell property. The first one she noticed was soon after Tammy's death on October 19th of 2019. Next, tools in the garage. Court documents reveal that law enforcement officials have ordered DNA testing for tools found on Chad Debell's property and a possible blood sample found in an apartment. Chad Debell and Lori Vallow's attorneys also demanded that the defense be provided all records, reports, and documentation of DNA testing that has already been conducted. Now, in a court hearing just the other day, prosecutors agreed to halt the DNA testing as they work with the defense on stipulations regarding the evidence. The judge did not set a future hearing date on DNA testing. Then we have Tammy Debell's autopsy. It hasn't been released and may not ever be released until after this case, but this could be the smoking gun. We do know through the family that they were told that she died of asphyxiation. The children claimed that their mother was suffering from declining physical health, and they stand behind their father, Chad Debell, and cannot believe that he would have killed his wife and their mother. How about the alleged fraud? According to prosecutors, Chad Debell increased Tammy's life insurance policy and texted with Lori Vallow about his wife being in limbo and Tammy being possessed by a spirit named Viola. Chad Debell was charged with 2 counts of insurance fraud after he allegedly lied to collect benefit from Tammy Debell's life insurance policy. So certainly those are some of the reasons why Chad Debell is probably going to be found guilty at trial. I know there's more. Let me know your thoughts in the comment below. Do you think he's going to walk, or do you think he's going to be found guilty? Mark Means has been disqualified from representing Lori Vallow. You heard it here first. This is literally news. It's only about 16 minutes old because we got it about 15 minutes ago. And it just shows you that we tried to bring you the most up-to-date news as it relates to ongoing criminal cases and true crime cases as it happens. And I'm telling you, how many times has something dropped literally minutes before we go on the air on our Tuesday night show? Yes, that's right. Mark Means has been disqualified. And you may ask yourselves, why, Scott? Because you raised this issue over a year ago. Frank, can you cue up that video and play the video where I said Mark Means should be disqualified a year ago, at least over a year, almost 2 years ago, right? Almost 2 years ago. Yours truly said there should not be a Mark Means on this case. I think he has a conflict of interest. Let me know when you're ready to roll that video, Frank.
The amount of resources that can be saved in order to allow that to happen, and given that I represent her husband, Chad Debell, in the event that there's an issue there.
Mr. Means, have you ever represented any of the alleged co-conspirators that are set forth in the criminal complaint?
No, Your Honor, other than Mrs. Debell.
Well, there you have it. We've had that one queued up. We've had that one for a while because when it happened, I was like, did I just hear that right? Particularly when he made the representation to the court that he had not had represented any of the alleged co-conspirators, i.e. Chad Debell. So let me read part of this order, and I apologize for having to read it, but it was sent and we tried to print it out, and it's a little fuzzy. And I don't have all of it. Basically, I'll just read it to you from what I have so you don't think I'm making this stuff up. We don't make stuff up. At the outset, this court has considered and reviewed the findings of facts entered by the magistrate on July 31st of 2020 in case CR 22-20-838 and determined those findings to be accurate. As those findings were made in a sealed document and the court having found that good cause exists to disseminate portions of that document in consideration of this decisions, the magistrate's findings are included herein verbatim. 1. Lori and Chad were married on November 5th, 2019. At the time of their marriage, Lori Vallow had 2 minor children, Joshua J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan. On February 20th, 2020, Lori was arrested in Hawaii with 2 counts of felony desertion of a child, as well as a misdemeanor charge of resisting, obstructing an officer, solicitation of a crime, and contempt of court under Madison County jurisdiction. Rexburg law enforcement took Lori into custody on March 4th of 2020. Lori retained Mark Means, exact date unknown. The court continues. On March 21st, 2020, Chad retained Mr. Pryor, who works in the same building complex as Mr. Means. That's an office sharing situation. That is not uncommon for professionals to do that, particularly if you're a solo one-man show. You lease space and you get the appearance of a much bigger, office, so to speak, without having to cover all the overhead yourself. Then on March 24th, 2020, according to Mr. Pryor, on March 31st, 2020, according to a document submitted, Lori and Chad signed a conflict of interest waiver. Now, we'll talk about that in a second. It says, on April 28th, 2020, Mr. Means posted the following on Twitter. Please note that this office, notice being provided by other means as well, represents Mr. Chad Debell. If an agency, investigative authority, etc., wishes to contact my client, please contact my office directly. On April 28th, 2020, Mr. Means sent a press release stating the following. Please take notice that this office represents Mr. Chad Debell. Please direct all requests for communications/statements of the like to this office. On April 28th, 2020, Lori and Chad had a visit via telephone/tablet in the Madison County Jail. During this conversation, Chad stated, Mark Means is my attorney. Chad alluded he had shared confidential information with Mr. Means that Chad believed would be covered by attorney-client privilege. The video recording also suggests that Chad believed he would not have to testify against Lori if Mr. Means represented them both. On May 2nd, Mr. Means told the court during a bail reduction hearing in Madison County for Lori that he represented both Lori and Chad. On June 9th, 2020, a search warrant was executed on Chad's property. During the search, Chad called Mr. Means before calling Mr. Pryor. Based on the finding from the search warrant on June 10th of 2020, Chad was charged with 2 counts of felony destruction, alteration, or concealment of evidence under Idaho Code 18-2603. These charges were amended on June 30th, 2020, include 2 felony counts of conspiracy to destroy, alter, and conceal evidence. Lori was listed in the criminal complaint as a co-conspirator. Lori was charged with 2 felony counts of conspiracy to destroy, alter, conceal evidence. On June 29th, Chad was listed in the criminal complaint as a co-conspirator. This court has made additional inquiries and reviewed facts set forth in the record in this case since the time of the magistrate's finding, and therefore, in addition to the magistrate's findings, considers the following. On February 20th, Vallow was arrested and charged with 2 counts of felony desertion of child misdemeanor. Vallow was represented by blah, 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 blah. Let's get on to the good stuff. Where was it? Basically, the court finds that there is a conflict of interest that is not waivable. It says, finally, the very actions taken by Mr. Mean raise questions about his ability to continue his representations of Vallow. A conflict analysis is an analysis of whether the decision of counsel demonstrates their ability to uphold their duties to clients, past and present. Mr. Means has potentially made himself a witness in the case by filing multiple pleadings in the form of declarations containing factual assertions of Mr. Means submitted under penalty of perjury. That unusual manner of practice has further caused the court to be concerned about the effectiveness of Mr. Means' representations of Vallow in this case. Interesting. Also of concern is a possible intentional or unintentional waiver of Vallow's attorney-client privilege where Mr. Means has submitted to the record purported facts from statements Vallow made to Mr. Means under the umbrella of the privilege she enjoys while she has been deemed incompetent to proceed. This is precisely the situation that ethics rules caution against, and the rules stress that lawyers should avoid becoming witnesses in their clients' cases. That's right. If you can't be the lawyer and a witness at the same time. That's why you take investigators. You almost do nothing without a witness in a criminal case. unbelievable. I mean, we'll continue on and then we'll talk about it. It's unbelievable. The court finds an actual conflict exists in this case due to Mr. Means' former representation of Debell and the timing of that representation, and Debell's waiver is insufficient to overcome the risk of harm in allowing Mr. Means to remain counsel to any party connected to this case. Additionally, Mr. Means' practice of submitting declarations under penalty of perjury have called into question his ability to competently and effectively represent Vallow going forward despite the pending stay in this case. Finally, the court is balancing the rights of Vallow to counsel of her choice and her present inability to be thoroughly examined to ascertain whether she could knowingly, intelligently, and meaningfully waive her rights to conflict-free, qualified counsel, given the potential for a penalty of death she faces in the crime she is charged with, must cautiously act to protect her rights. On balance, because conflicts questions should be addressed by all trial courts, blah, blah, blah. And then I don't have that following page because I haven't got the whole order yet. But that's the meat and potatoes of it. Conflict. Conflict, conflict, conflict. Frank, can you play that video one more time? And let me tell you why it's so important. Play the conflict. Dun, 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 breaking news. Dun, 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 right?
The amount of resources that can be saved in order to allow that to happen, and given that I represent her husband, Chad Debell, in the event that there's an issue there.
Mr. Means, have you ever represented any of the alleged co-conspirators that are set forth in the criminal complaint?
No, Your Honor, other than Mrs. Debell.